Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name's Kayla. I'm here representing the Acelab team, and we have Jonathan here from 9-1. He's going to be walking us through the presentation. And while we let everybody join in, I will quickly show you Acelab, take you over to 9-1's page, and we'll do a quick look of that together. All right, so in just a moment, you should be able to see my screen here. Here we are in Acelab. We've got 9-1's page pulled up just for future reference. If you're ever looking to do some materials research, this search bar at the very top of the screen is a great place to start. You can search for specific manufacturers. You can use our new AI search here as well. Definitely check this out when you have some time. But here we are on 9-1's page. We've got Jonathan's contact information here for you, front and center. We've got some value propositions, video, as well as their products for you to explore. So you can click into any one of these product pages here to learn more about the product specifically. And you can also download it to or save it to your firm library here as well for future reference. So feel free to check out their page here whenever you have a moment. A lot of great information here. I will drop a link in the chat for you to reference. Couple other things to make note of before we start. Today is an AIA accredited presentation. So we did collect your AIA numbers already upon registration. So you're most likely already good to go there. If you're worried we didn't get your AIA number, I'll put a form in the chat so you can fill that out to ensure that we get you credit today. Another thing you're going to notice during the presentation is a poll that will pop up about 3/4 of the way through the presentation. That is an optional poll, so no need to fill it out if you're not interested in getting any kind of follow-up after today. However, if you would like to be connected with Jonathan and his team after the webinar, fill out the poll. We will connect you via a conversation in Acelab. You'll see an email come through in your inbox within a few days of the webinar. And you can respond directly to that email or log into your Acelab account to communicate with Jonathan and ask any further questions and get all the information that you're looking to get. Another thing to make note of, Q&A. We will do Q&A towards the end of the presentation, but at any point you're welcome to open up that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, drop in your questions or comments there, and we will get to as many as we can towards the end. And we will also do a post-webinar survey. So after the webinar is over, you'll see that come up on your screen. Feel free to share any feedback you have. We really appreciate that. And with that being said, I will go ahead and pass it over to Jonathan to get us started.
Okay, good afternoon. Glad to be here. And my name is Jonathan with 9-Wood. We're a custom wood ceiling manufacturer, and we'll get going here. And Kayla, you see the screen share here?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. And as she said, feel free to throw out your questions in the Q&A or click the raise hand. Interrupt at any time if you have a question. That's not a problem. We'd appreciate any feedback, and I will do my best to answer the questions. So here we go. Okay, so this course, it's a CEU accredited course. I'll give you your 1 point. It covers the 4 topics: the understanding of the benefits of wood ceilings suspended by T-bar, the materials that go into wood ceilings, and also identifying critical design and functional considerations and the different types and aesthetics of wood ceilings. And so we're kind of a general overview of the wood ceiling kind of genre, as they say. And first off, we're focused on Division 9 wood ceilings. So wood panels or planks that are attached to suspended T-bar, a drop ceiling. Almost all manufacturers design their systems or engineered to attach to a 15/16 heavy-duty grid, but it can vary depending on the style, but very universal in almost every space. And right off the bat, just to avoid any confusion between Div 9 and Div 6 in terms of where wood ceilings fit in, I wanted to look at 3 basic areas here. So in Division 9, when it comes to installation, you're dealing with an acoustical sub, most likely, and they provide the whole package of materials. They're buying the wood ceiling from the manufacturer, they're getting the ACT T-bar installation per their bid package, and they install all of that, working with oftentimes a specialist manufacturer. Whereas in structural millwork, they're fabricating panels at the facility and installing them themselves. With Division 9, with a wood ceiling, you have a different need and expectation for quality versus like a wall, where you're going to see and touch it. And so all manufacturers abide by the CISCA in terms of Div 9 wood ceilings, which is the Ceilings and Interior System Construction Association, which provides a great framework for standard quality expectations, not just with the fabricated, wood panels or wood systems, but also with the installation to make sure that tolerances, when they accumulate, deliver, the correct result that looks great. Whereas in architectural, on the millwork side, they abide by standards that are way more in depth necessary for a wall, like architectural woodwork standards. They can even cover grading, walls, and also like things regarding premium finishes and sequenced veneers. In Division 9, like I mentioned, not always, but a lot of times you can be dealing with specialists, acoustical subs that install this often. And some manufacturers, like my own manufacturer, that work in this all day long. On the other side, structural millwork, they're really focused on the complex millwork, complex woodworking. They handle the expensive high-end stuff like sequence wall veneers and things like that. And so that's a basic breakdown of the differences. And I wanted to get into the benefits of wood ceilings. And again, if you have any questions, throw it in the Q&A or click the raise hand feature. And one of the big benefits is, as I mentioned, all manufacturers engineer the majority of their wood ceiling systems to be suspended by T-bar, oftentimes a heavy-duty 15/16. So it's already engineered. It's universal in almost every building type, and it's easy to procure, and it works out, very great. And it's either through a direct attachment with a screw or some type of clip, but that's how it's going to be designed. And as you can see here in the photo, with the T-bar systems, it doesn't have to always be just a flat rectangular space. You can actually achieve, quite a bit of, curving and shapes within a space, as you can see here at the University of Oregon Knight campus. A lot can be done there. It conceals the plenum, which is actually great, right? Because it can actually put a beautiful ceiling, below all this other stuff you need, HVAC, insulation, and so on. But it does create a need for accessibility, which, as we hear, is pretty much universal on most projects. And I'll cover that here in a bit. And I think obviously, wood ceiling is very expensive, so it has to work harder for a client, and that could be through acoustics, which we'll talk about, but also providing good accessibility for the maintenance department too. So, speaking of acoustics, providing more value for a client, wood ceilings, the acoustics, sound absorption in particular, is really driven by two things: the percent opening and having sound absorbing materials, behind the panels. That's all you need. You don't have to have the word acoustic in the product name in order to get some actually pretty good NRCs. You can see some examples here, and it can vary a lot. So that's what you really need to look for. So as you're working with the manufacturer, let them know early on, what NRC or sound absorption you need, and make sure you're getting the information or being informed as you're making design decisions. The product can actually deliver that. And that's pretty important. The other thing to keep in mind is a manufacturer should be able to provide a Class A fire rating for all wood components. That could include the ceiling, or if they're providing a wall too, it should include solid, veneer, and also any plywood or different type of wood components. So for veneer, in our industry, the cores, like if you go to Home Depot and you're looking at a core, like an MDF or particle board core, the fire rating when it's actually manufactured is impregnated into the actual core itself. That's how it achieves the Class A rating. For solid wood, a topical coating is oftentimes applied over the wood in a very controlled process to ensure it gets some degree of penetration, and steel is sufficiently sanded and whatever, so that the coatings can adhere correctly. And then any other wood components are oftentimes pressure treated. So there are very standard controlled ways in which a Class A fire rating can be applied to any wood ceiling and achieve that code requirement you need, which is very important. And the other thing, as I mentioned, that oftentimes, with wood ceilings in Division 9, you can work with a specialist, and there are advantages with that. It's a custom material. It can be complicated. There's a lot that can go wrong. And that not only would they provide the wood panels or the hardware, but they can provide the install guides, coordination, samples, data sheets, and even technical support, testing reports, engineering opinion letters, to deliver a lot of different results. And, even here, as you can see in this photo, Virgin Galactic Gateway, which might look more like a millwork situation, that can be done with a wood ceiling, acoustical sub and specialist company to deliver a lot of, high quality, beautiful results. And now I wanted to kind of move into some of the materials. And again, if you have any questions, just shoot them out there. So um, I'm going to cover solid, veneer, the wood finishes, and some of the hardware. There's a lot of things that go into a custom wood ceiling, and we'll hit each one of them. So right off the bat, a solid wood. Solid wood is actually a beautiful material. Everyone loves wood, but it will have character, natural character, and color variation. And that varies per species. And so as you can see, like down at the bottom, the heart sapwood, as you look at that picture of the log, that really controls the color variation. And every different species is going to have a different variations or extremes. For example, if you go to Home Depot and you're looking at cedar, it has a lot of color variation. Boards can be very blonde, very brown, and everything in between. Other species have a tighter range. It can all depend, regardless of the quality grade. And so just make sure you get samples from the manufacturer so you can see that. And ideally, installed photos of the species you're looking at and a similar product so you can actually see how it looks in the space. As you can see in this photo, it gives you a better idea than just a small sample. A solid is field cut friendly. It's suitable for exteriors and it has a lot of standard options. You got a lot of different profile sizes from 1x2 to 2x6, lengths up to 12 feet, and you could have mixed and vertical grain. And so there's a lot of different options with solid. It just be aware of the color and character variation you're getting into when you specify a particular species. So the different grain options are mixed grain and vertical grain. And so mixed grain is a more budget-friendly option. It's more natural organic grain, and it's more budget-friendly, as I said. And so when they mill the log, they don't sort through for the particular type of grain. So it's all mixed together, and the diagram there shows kind of the extreme range, but it can look very beautiful, as you can see in the photo. It really just depends on the design intent, and what you're looking for providing with your client. And it's a very standard option in almost all species. Vertical grain has a premium, has an additional cost, which could vary per species. And the cost is fundamentally driven by the fact that when they mill the logs, they're actually going through and sorting out the grain to only achieve that tighter grain pattern, as you can see here in the diagram. And so you're going to have more consistent grain. So if you really do need that look, oftentimes this can be an option available in the species, but it will have an additional cost. It will have a premium. And, we're dealing with custom materials and wood materials. Like I said, there's a lot of, natural and color variation, and there are things to consider when you're specifying solid wood. Keep in mind, there is no single standard ceiling grade. Every supplier is different, and oftentimes they procure or supply wood regionally where they're located. So it's all going to be different. So make sure you get samples, of whatever species you're looking at and the systems you're looking at, and also ask from a manufacturer to get photos of installed products with the same species and system you're looking at. So you can actually physically see the samples and the products, but you can also see how it looks in a variety of different applications and conditions, which gives you a better idea of what color variation and character you're going to see before you get too far down the road. Also, keep in mind, stains can provide more color consistency. They're not going to remove it, but you're just kind of reducing the variation a little bit. And it can help control that if a stain is something that you're needing on your particular project. And a manufacturer should be able to provide custom stain matches. If you send them a control, that shouldn't be an issue. And this is true of all wood products, but yield impacts budget. So it's something to be aware of. Ask your manufacturer, hey, how is yield going to impact the budget? You don't want to inadvertently go down the road of a more expensive type of configuration or profile that you may not necessarily need. So random and shorter links provide the best yield. So if that does work with your system, that's specifically like a progressively installed wood system can accommodate that. The other thing to keep in mind is if you want a net 1 inch, exactly 1 inch, not nominal, like a 5/8 or 3/4, that's going to require a 2x. And so like if you go to Home Depot and you see all the 2x material, the manufacturer is going to buy a much bigger size, mill it down, and a lot of that's going to go in the waste. And so it has an additional cost. So make sure if you specify 1 inch, that's exactly what you need. And the yield can also be impacted by nominal sizes. So typically a 1x4 and a 1x6 and a 1x2 will produce the best yield, and they should be a little more budget friendly. Ask your manufacturer, but be aware of those things so that you're informed of how different design decisions can actually impact your budget. Um, Veneers. Veneers are different than solid wood in terms of standard grades. They're universally sourced. That's true of all wood ceiling manufacturers you could deal with. And the grade is defined by the Hardwood Plywood Veneer Association. So that's great in that regard. It's more universal, very standard across the whole nation. And they're going to have substrates that are fire rated particle board core or MDF. And as I mentioned, the fire rating is impregnated in the core when it's manufactured. And so it helps achieve that Class A rating. And so manufacturers you're dealing with should be able to provide you with the information to verify that that's the case. It's more consistent in grain and color, apples to apples when you're looking at the same species in a veneer versus a solid. And apples to apples, it's less cost than a solid wood. So if you're looking at like a 1x4, teak veneer, that's going to be more budget friendly than a 1x4 solid, teak. And it can be CNC'd and shaped to curves. So it does have some flexibility in that regard. And they're sold in sheet goods. Most species or all species have a 4x8 sheet good. Some have 4x10. And so you can get whatever size you want within that sheet size. So you can anything from a 1x1 to technically you can get a 4x8. And so be aware that's definitely available. And typically they come in 3 slices: rotary, plane, quarter, and rift. There's 4 there that are common. Um, they can be stained, to match any color. So if staining is what you need, reach out to your manufacturer. Say, hey, if I send you control, can I get a custom color match? And they should be able to provide that. Um, and veneer slices, these are 3 of the more common ones: plane, quartered, and rift. And plane is the more budget friendly, and then it gets more expensive as you go to quartered and rift. And the diagrams kind of explain why. As you move from plane to rift, there's a more labor and milling involved when they're cutting the logs, and there's more waste, as you can see there in the diagrams. And that's what drives up the additional cost. And different species might have different availability of these. So if you want a particular type of slice and look, just let the manufacturer know what you're interested in so they can tell you what the budget impacts are and send you samples and ideally even photos of installed spaces so you can see how that's going to look and make an informed decision, for your design with your client. Um, and actually the photo there, Sacramento International Airport, that shows a white maple plain-sawn, so it can look very great, be budget friendly. It just depends really on the design intent and the space. Veneer considerations, like with solid, it's custom. There's things you need to watch out for. As with solid wood, yield impacts budget. Although you can get any size you want out of a 4x8 sheet, the size actually can impact the cost quite a bit. So for example, if you want a 4-foot 1-inch panel out of an 8-foot sheet, it means the manufacturer is going to have to take 3 feet 15 inches, and that's going to have to go in the recycle or waste bin. And so it's going to be more expensive than if you stay on modules. So ideally a 2-foot, 4-foot, and 8-foot would be the best yield. So it's something to be aware of. So if you don't necessarily particularly need the 4-foot 1-inch panel, having a 3-foot, like 11-inch panel would produce a lot better yield. You can get 2 of them, per sheet. And also keep in mind that the grades are universal and standard for all manufacturers. And so what you're going to see is for panels, they're going to have an A grade, which is defined, by the Hardwood Association. That would be the face. It's a great grade. All manufacturers provide that. And then for grills, and the diagram you can see there, it's split. So on the most visible surface, that's going to be an A grade. But on the secondary surface on the side, that's going to be a B grade. It looks great, but things to be aware of. And make sure you get the samples and again, installed photos so you can see what it's going to look like. And stain can provide more color consistency. It won't remove it, but it can help reduce it a bit. And so it's something you should explore with the manufacturer if that's something you need to do, reduce the color variation and moving forward there. Finishes, which are critically important in the end of the day. And so I'm going to cover the interior, exterior, and stains. So in our industry, there's three basic interior finishes: a catalyzed lacquer, an ultraviolet, and a water-based. And the UV is common in like flooring. It's very thick. It kind of hides the wood. It's not necessarily as important in a ceiling application, which doesn't need that kind of durability. Catalyzed lacquer is used often, and water-based is becoming more available. But you want to really kind of protect the wood, but also highlight the beauty of the wood also. Exterior, oftentimes it's a urethane finish. And if you ever have an application like there in the photo at the Brookfield Zoo, make sure you get samples, both. The sheens can vary, from an exterior coating to an interior, to make sure you get something that's, a good enough match in that particular situation. Stains are applied in our industry in two basic ways. So if it's a lighter stain, it oftentimes can be put into the interior coatings. And so it's applied at one time. It's a darker stain, then it will be applied first, dried, and then the finishes will be applied after it, usually through some type of finishing line and equipment. Again, stains are, manufacturers should be able to provide not only standard stains, but custom stain matches to send any control you have to match if you're matching millwork or particular design intent. They should be able to provide that in any color, which can be very important. Critical design and functional considerations. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Okay. So I want to hit a few of these that I know are really important. They come up a lot talking to designers, but accessibility, right? It's a beautiful wood ceiling covering up the HVAC and all the stuff up there, but your client's going to need access to some degree. So manufacturers should be able to provide three types of access. I'm going to go through each of these solutions: full, spot, and limited access. And there's three important questions here. Where do you need access? How often do you need access? And what do you need to get access to? And you may not know all the exact answers to these questions when you start out working with the manufacturer, but let them know that accessibility is going to be an important requirement, and they should inform you of different design decisions, how it's going to, implicate them. Um, so here we go. So in terms of full access, there's two standard systems in our industry that work well to do this. These are situations where the maintenance is going to be needing to get into access lots of areas in a space frequently, right? It's going to be happening a lot throughout the entire space. So the first one is a lay-in. And it has some type of either tegular or clip attachment. It lays into the grid. 2x2s are very common, but it can be done to a variety of different sizes. It works pretty well. In a seismic zone, it will require additional hardware to meet that, which makes it a little more challenging to the ease of access, right? On the right side is a torsion or tension flange system. And these are great because they're seismic compliant. And in some cases, they can be very easy, single person access, and they can hinge down. Check with your manufacturer. Make sure you're getting a system that will work well for your client's maintenance department and deliver what they need to get up in the space. And these are the two most common. But you may not need frequent access throughout the entire ceiling space, right? And so why should you pay for it? Well, spot access is a great option to go to in that case when you know it's specific areas and it's less frequent. And they provide flexibility and they can be budget friendly. These are two the most common options in our industry. The first one is a field access panel. The manufacturer can provide a standard module panel for whatever ceiling area it is. In this case, it's showing a grill system, like a 1 foot by 8 foot, and they can provide the instructions and even the jigs and stuff. So that basically a lay-in panel can be cut out of it with the appropriate, backers and things like that, which is great. And so those can actually be located and determined during installation. So if you don't know where access is going to be and it's not frequent. It's only in specific areas that can be actually coordinated between the manufacturer and you and the acoustical sub, even during installation or the shop drawing process. And it's fairly economical. On the bottom side is a caddy clip system. The real benefit of this is it takes an existing module panel, whatever it is, so 1 foot by 6 foot or 1 foot by 8 foot or 1 foot by 10 foot, and it turns it into a access panel. And with these little clips, goes right into the standard 15/16 heavy duty grid. And so it works out great, blends in, you can't see it. And the real negative here is obviously if you need to get up there all the time, it's going to take at least 2 people to pull it down. It's going to be a little bit slower, but again, a great option when you need infrequent kind of spot access in specific locations. And so they're budget friendly and they're flexible and they can work out really good. Ask your manufacturer what options they have, and they should have options for almost all styles and systems. The other thing to keep in mind too, in situations where they don't really need access, but there could be rare occasions where maintenance they may need to get up into the ceiling. Some systems, these panelized products like a panelized grill and a panelized linear, as in the diagrams here, are attached through a direct screw attachment through a wood crosspiece member into the heavy duty grid. And so they can be uninstalled. You don't want to do that too frequently, right? Because it can strip out the hole. It can become a little more challenging for maintenance because they're not acoustical subs to get it looking good. But it's something to keep in mind. If it's going to be a very rare and probably it can happen, once every few years or at least it's available. This is good to know and good to tell your client, hey, this system, you can get access. It's not good for frequent, but it can work for you in that situation. And some systems are not going to be accessible, like a progressive linear installation. Like if you've ever installed flooring in your home, you start from the perimeter and move out. There's some systems like that and with ceilings, and those are not access friendly. And so just let your manufacturer know, hey, access is a concern, and they should inform you and provide you with the options and budget impacts of different choices as you work through the design process. Acoustics is a great way to have the beautiful wood ceiling work harder for your client, provide more value. And as I mentioned earlier, you don't need to have the word acoustic in the name to get good acoustics. It's really just driven by percent opening and sound absorbing materials. So the two factors that drive it. And so here are a variety of different products. There's an acoustic product, perforation, micro perfs are common too, and then there's a linear and a grill, and they can deliver a variety of different, NRCs for sound absorption. And so just let the manufacturer know, and they should be able to provide you with the third-party testing and the information you need to get that information early on. And a few products may have limits in terms of acoustics. It's good to bring it up early on in the process and make sure you're not heading down a dead end. Lighting integration is important, even with other fixtures and stuff like that. And so it definitely can make or break a space. But with wood ceilings, there's really no limit to fixture selection. A lot of different fixtures, as you can see here in the photo, are available and can be coordinated between the manufacturer and the acoustical sub during installation. Can lights, linear LEDs, large pendants, they can fit actually, as you can see here, in between wood members. They can break up the wood member, segment it, and it's important to map out lighting packages early and make sure the manufacturer has a plan in terms of how you're going to suspend the weight. Is there enough room in the plenum? How's that going to impact accessibility? There's a long checklist of things that need to go through to make sure you don't end up with some headaches later on, during the shop drawing or installation process. God forbid that work there. Here's some other options here. And again, it's just coordinating with the manufacturer and sub is essential, and make sure the manufacturer has a plan for not only detailing them out, early on, design and shop drawings, but coordinating that with the sub. Oftentimes, the best and most common method is field cutting in the cases where you need to cut out, like for a fixture or different lighting. Is a great way of doing that. The manufacturer can provide those instructions and the installation drawings, or even provide jigs, sometimes 3D printed jigs or whatever is necessary. Factory cutting can be done. It can be potentially more precise if necessary, but it will require more coordination and can have an additional cost, either on the labor side. Fixture plates can create custom openings and they're available, but they add cost. So the big idea here is there's lots of options available, but make sure you get the proper details from the manufacturer, and they have a plan to coordinate that all the way through installation, so you don't run into any headaches or issues, coordinating all the fixtures and with accessibility and other things going on. Color matching. Um, any manufacturer should be able to provide not just standard color options, but custom color matching. It's a very expensive material. It's a premium, expensive material, and you deserve to get the exact color you need. Dial in the exact color and tone. And so this just shows like a gambit of all these different options here. But there's beyond standard colors, custom color matching. Quality at installs and installation is important. So make sure the manufacturer of the custom color has a process to ensure that they can deliver that result, at the end of the day when the material arrives at the job site and gets installed. But those should be available in a variety of different colors. And the other thing to keep in mind too, budgets obviously matter a lot. And there's certain drivers that are worth focusing on that drive cost more than others. Obviously, species, can vary a lot. Veneer solid are different options. As I mentioned earlier, an apples to apples veneer will typically be more budget friendly than a solid. It's something to consider. And wood size, the more wood in the system, the more expensive it's going to be. Less wood, the less expensive. And another thing to keep in mind is it doesn't take a very large, wood ceiling to have a big impact in your client space. Small clouds or ceilings can actually have a big impact too, which is another way to manage the budget. You still get a high quality custom wood ceiling. It's just a smaller scope, in like a cloud or a lobby or something like that. Unique panels can drive up cost, especially as you get a lot of unique sizes, requires more coordination, potentially more factory cutting. Complex geometries can drive cost too, and obviously ultra customization. As you get beyond all of the pre-engineered systems with the manufacturer working with, that can increase the cost quite a bit too. And then, as I mentioned earlier, project scope. So, and these show some basic ranges of these three different systems. But as you get into ultra customization, the sky's the limit, right? I mean, they can get over $100 a foot, but there are budget-friendly options. And so make sure your manufacturer is giving you, fast, real-time data on the cost impact as you're looking at design choices, so you can be informed about those impacts. But these are the big cost drivers. And lead. I wanted to be clear, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on sustainability in this presentation. It's a very important topic. We're actually working on a sustainability CEU right now. We've submitted to the AIA, so I'm hoping we can roll that out later this year. But I did want to cover lead. And so with wood ceilings, the big credits that are most important is listed here, the 7 and 4 certified and recycled content. So manufacturers should be able to provide a material that can get the MR7 certified credit with either FSC or PEFC, and then recycled content. When it comes to veneer, as I mentioned, they have a fire-rated MDF or particle board core, and those cores could gain the ability to get that credit too. And those are the most common available, but just let the manufacturer know, what you need in terms of lead, and they should be able to provide you that information and help steer you in the right direction, but almost all species should be either FFC or PEFC, which qualify for those credits. Types of wood ceilings. I don't know if anyone has any questions. So I'll go through some of the different aesthetics here. Cubes, they can be modular or monolithic, as you see here in the photos. They can be full or spot access. Some of them actually are accessible by their very nature, or you can build in spot access, and they obviously have a lot of percent opening, which you can achieve good sound absorption as long as you have some sound absorbing material behind it, which could just be duct liner, insulation, or even a theater or soundboard, which are readily available and acoustical sub can purchase. And it can be solid or veneer. So you have a lot of choices with regard to species, slice and cut, and different sizes. And so a great different style if you're looking for a cube. Acoustic planks, a very unique kind of real wood kind of look with the linear grooves. It's a progressive install, which means that, just like if you installed flooring in your home, you start from the perimeter, you go out, which means generally it's not accessible. So if accessibility, full access, or spot access is a concern, this is probably not a good a style or aesthetic to specify or design. You're going to want to look at other options. And the percent opening, it has good sound absorption, and veneer only. Doesn't have solid, but there are standard species a manufacturer will have available, and you can always do custom color matching to get a lot of different looks in the ceiling. So, and anything within the 4x8 sheet, just remember that, yield does impact budget. So the 4-foot 1 inch is going to cost quite a bit more than a 3-foot 15-inch panel or size. Coffers, kind of a classic, kind of old look. They're modular for spot access, no percent opening, so it can reflect a lot of sound. It's generally veneer only with solid or veneer molding. And grills, a great system. We see this quite a bit. Um, uh, they're modular, and so they're going to have abutting reveals. As you can see here in the photo, you can't provide any species can't be like 30-foot long or 20-foot long. Typically, they're lengths of 12 feet, which means when you have spaces spanning longer lengths, you're going to have a reveal in between the abutting panels. Typically, it's a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch. That's the best size to account for the wood movement and make sure it visually looks great over time, as the relative humidity changes, even in a climatized space. There's full, limited, and spot access solutions. It's very flexible in that regard, depending on what your need is. And a good percent opening. As you saw before, you can even get NRCs up to 0.95. So a variety of different options there. There's scrim options. If you need to block out the plenum, they are available. It's solid and veneer. So a lot of different choices and profiles and configurations. Very versatile and flexible. Here's a 2x3 member. And I like this photo because it does highlight that, with Division 9, you're working with an acoustical sub and in some occasions a wood ceiling specialist. And together they can, provide a lot of different custom actually installed applications like this. In a lot of situations, they're field cut, and the manufacturer, coordinates install drawings and maybe in particular field getting instructions. That way, schedules don't often permit to get all the as-builts to do that, and so it can work out great. With the proper setup with these specialists, you can get results like that in the photo with angular cuts, stuff like that, and provide a variety of different nominal panel sizes that get better yield and can be cut in the field by an acoustical sub. Here's a 1x2. Kind of highlighting, different planes intersecting in a space that can even be, field cut to the particular measurements. 1x4s. So there's a lot of different options with the grill. Great product in that regard. Linear wood. So different aesthetic. They can be progressive or modular installed, whether it's a plank or a panelized system. And within the plank system, you have a random or staggered reveals, and they won't be accessible. That's a system shown here in the photo. There may be a spot access solution. Some manufacturers provide that, some don't. But if you need full access, this is not the right system to go down. And they can have scrim or felt. This photo actually shows a felt, which provides more contrast between the wood and the reveal. And you have solid or veneer. So you have a lot of different species and size options, and it can be custom color matched, the exact color and tone you need for your particular project. So again, with linear wood slats, those are progressively installed, and they're going to be random or staggered, not accessible. Scrim or felt, I said, solid or veneer. And oftentimes manufacturers can do the wall systems too that interface with the ceiling, which can be great. So you're not dealing with two different manufacturers, providing from two different sources. It ensures that, the wood ceiling manufacturer can provide both, and that the wood and the finish will align and look consistent to one another. And also linear can be provided in a panelized product. These are modular, just like the grill, which means they don't come in 20 and 30-foot lengths, so up to 12 feet. So you will have abutting reveals, as you can see here in the photo, typically a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch. Full, limited, or spot access. There's a lot of different accessibility choices here, and a percent opening. So you can get some degree of sound absorption. Just ask your manufacturer, let them know what you're looking for or what they can deliver, and that can help inform your choice. You got scrim fabric options to block out the plenum and solid or veneer. So a lot of different configurations to choose from, for your project. Tiles. are modular, and you can get any size you want out of a 4x8 sheet. Just remember that obviously the yield matters. So 4 foot 1 inch is going to be more expensive because it's going to have more waste. You're going to have surrounding reveals around the system, and you have full spot or no access. There's a lot of different accessibility choices depending on what you need or what your client needs. It's veneer only. And in terms of NRCs, sound absorption, it's really going to come in two ways. One is a perforated or microperf. So perforated has much larger holes that allow the sound to go through the panel. So it can be like a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 of an inch hole, very visible. Even from this height as shown in the photo. A microperf has very tiny holes that enable sound to still go through and achieve good sound absorption. And so if you need sound absorption and you want a tile, ask your manufacturer for both options. You want the sound absorption, but you want it to look like a tile without the perfs, and the microperf is the way to go for sure. And so this actually highlights what I showed earlier. That's a lay-in system, but it's not going to be seismic compliant. It will require additional hardware to go in that. And this shows more of a full access system. This is actually a tension flange system. And so a single person access, they can disengage it and maintenance can get up there, right? And make sure you have the right system you need for a project, and also that it ultimately delivers a good. A full access system is going to be more expensive. And so it needs to be easy for the maintenance department to use, and maintain consistent reveals even after years of access, right? So it doesn't look funky and dissatisfies the client over time. And so just check with your manufacturer, find out what choices they have. But those are things to watch out for. Baffles, usually larger wood sizes, 2x6, 2x8, 2x12. Generally, we see them having more space between them. They can be kind of floating in kind of a cloud kind of layout. And obviously, the percent opening, up above, if you have some sound absorption material, you can definitely use that for NRCs. And so this is one where oftentimes they use an aircraft cable for suspension, and you have a lot of space between them. You may not want to see grid and things like that. May want to minimize suspension, but still have something that meets code and will be dependable, throughout. And then a lot of different wood wave options. And so curving is very much a expectation, when it comes to custom wood ceiling, and that may be a part of your design. So check with your manufacturer. This shows a grill and a linear curving. And as I mentioned earlier, not just with solid wood, you can shape it as seen in the photos here, but you can actually get, veneer members CNC to different profiles and shapes. There will be some cost impact to that, but if that's what you need to design, those options are available. Just find out early with the manufacturer if the capabilities of doing that and the budget impacts with a variety of different choices. And so lots of different things there. And obviously it's driven by the percent opening in terms of sound absorption, and depending on the system, you can have, a lot of different choices, veneer and solid, and a variety of different systems there. So, and this is a grill waves. This is like a grill. This has a metal flexi backer, which is common in our industry. And so up to quite a few small radii, you can actually get a good shape, as you can see in the photo, to adjust whatever curve you have. And it works great because it's very similar to just a normal non-curved grill, but it does provide the ability to direct screw into curved T-bars, and it can work out great. And up to 12-foot links in solid, 8-foot in veneer, lots of different configurations. This can go down to 1-foot radius potentially. And so yeah, lots of different choices there. Um, well, that's the AIA course. And I'd just like to open it up to questions. I don't know if Kayla, I wasn't seeing
Yeah.
there's the Q&A, and hopefully I wasn't missing stuff.
No, yeah, you're good. I think we could just save it for the end. Let me go ahead and launch the poll here now as well, so people can start filling that out. And folks, we have a few questions in here, but feel free to ask any more, and we'll get to those now. All right, Jonathan. So
Yeah.
first question we have here is, what is the difference of quarter sawn and rift sawn surfaces?
Yeah. Am I sharing my screen still?
Yes.
Okay. and this may not be the best answer here. I don't have, this kind of shows what it looks like. In terms of how the wood's cut, this shows that, and that's ultimately delivers a different look. Rift is most common in oak. For whatever reason, it's very popular. So you're going to see rift and oak, but like with a maple or cherry, it's most normally quartered. Quarter sawn is basically a vertical grain look. That's how you get the VG, or a quarter sawn and a veneer. But it has to do with the angles of these cuts, which give you a different visual look. That's the best answer I can give here, but this kind of shows what it's going to look like. So rift oak, typically quarter is in the other species like maple, walnut, and a cherry. And that's the big difference. And I think rift and quartered, pricing can vary a bit. They're definitely more expensive than plain sawn. Rift can be a bit more expensive than quarter depending on species. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, James, if you have any further questions, feel free to drop them in there. But moving on to the next question. How might temperature variation in the space due to a very high ceiling affect the wood ceiling integrity? I'm thinking about potential warping.
Yeah, that's a very good question, an important one. Um, and temperature is a factor, but what really drives a wood warpage is relative humidity or RH. And wood is hygroscopic. As a lot of you may be aware of, even though, we cut down the tree and it's dead, it continues to absorb moisture from the air and forever, actually. And so and the real threat to warpage is really extreme changes in RH. And so ideally, to avoid that, you acclimatize the building before the wood is installed. And so ideally, you deliver the wood panels and material planks into the space and you let it acclimatize. It usually takes, 2 to 4 days, depending on, where it's coming from to where it is. And there's ways a manufacturer can actually set up the sub to do that. They can actually measure the moisture content of the wood and make sure it's reached equilibrium, where it's kind of now in sync with the environment. And then that's the best time to install it. And what you want to avoid is huge swings. Like you get the wood in the building, it's not fully buttoned up, it has a lot of the RH from the outside air. You install it and then you crank up the heat, which lowers the RH rapidly, right? The RH goes into the teens, and you're more likely to get warpage. So like for solid wood, that's typically cupping. It's more likely to cup or crook. And veneers, they can actually shrink quite a bit. I've seen, issues where people cranked up the HVAC, they had a huge drop in RH, and like a long veneer tile or panel can even shrink eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch with a particle board core MDF. And so it's really the RH swings, and the best way to avoid that is talk to the manufacturer, because play to the strengths of the particular material in terms of the environment you're in, and also the system. Some systems might be more prone or less prone, so bring it up early. And then make sure, and I know you may not have control over this, but the general contractor should be making sure wood materials are acclimatized with the sub, and they're installed in a controlled environment, and they're avoiding huge swings in relative humidity. Ideally, it's between 25 and 55% RH, and then you just avoid like cranking up the HVAC. Sometimes they install it, they do that, and that can really drive it down. It causes shrinkage or warpage. So, but a great question. It's important because when that goes wrong, it can be a hard one to fix.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, next question. Which wood type, such as veneer or solid, is best to use for acoustic panel frames or covers?
Um, to make sure I understand your question correctly, what do you mean by an acoustic panel frame or cover? Like
Yeah,
I don't know if
feel free to clarify there. Yeah, I'm not sure if they um, have any clarification. Maybe you can answer a little more broadly. And for this one,
um, I would think both could be a potential option. I think as you get deeper, like if it's, I'm not, and I apologize if I'm not understanding your question correctly, Ruben, but if it's like a box frame around some type of acoustic panel, if it's really deep, at some point a veneer would be a better option. As you get to wider and wider solid wood, especially beyond 1x6, it can be more prone to having issues and just tolerance issues or prone to warpage. Whereas the veneer can, if you have a 10-inch deep or whatever, a better option. But as long as it's a, 1x2, 1x4 in that range, both could be a viable choice as I understand it. And depending on the joinery, I don't know if they're like mitered or whatever around the frames. Both of those can be done, either in the field or in the factory potentially. So hopefully I'm answering your question well enough there. And you can anyone can reach out to me. My contact info is available. So if you want to do follow up and say, hey, that didn't really answer my question. Here's what I'm looking at, or you have a project in mind, I'd be glad to give you whatever time to answer it
Yeah, that would
sufficiently.
be
So
great. Yeah, we'll share email addresses as well, Jonathan, if you'd like to follow with anybody afterwards too who asked a question. But that is all the questions for right now. So I think that gives us plenty of time to um, go over. I think you had something you wanted to show on the website, right, Jonathan?
yeah. One of the things we've heard a lot from designers and architects working with them is, when you're working with premium custom materials, they get pretty complicated. And like I'm a manufacturer that works in that all day long, so it's it's easier for me, right? But that's not true of of designers, right? You're not living and breathing in a custom wood ceiling all day long, and it can be hard to get information from a manufacturer. They're not always available. If it's a really small project, they charge additional cost. It can be hard to get custom stain matches. There's a lot of challenges. Some are innate to the custom nature of wood, which requires a lot of effort, a lot of risk, and some are actually caused by manufacturers. And so Ninewood launched Custom Made Fast. And here, let me switch over. Are you able to see the screen here?
Yes.
Okay. And it's a new service designed to help solve those problems. That you can still get the custom wood ceiling you want for a client, but without the compromise going to off the shelf or a lot of limited options because it's expensive. You deserve to get exactly what you need for a client, right? Or without all the headaches. It can be a ton of effort and there can be risk in going down this road. And so right off the bat, we don't want to have limits, right? And so we provide a full range, of different styles and aesthetics. There's hundreds of thousands of custom configurations. We'll be adding nano perf, a micro perf this year. And so you have a whole variety of things. We actually just had a meeting today where we're actually going through, hey, what's the demand we're seeing? And we want to add products to this that enable you to get a custom with ceiling without obviously overcomplicating it. Um, and so, and like here, for example, this is our online design tool, which you can log in at ninewood.com and use. And one of the areas we got feedback in is getting information from manufacturer can be very challenging. And so this provides an avenue. Early on in design or research, you have the availability to get a lot of information quickly. You want photos or whatever, you can look at basic different designs in real time, different species, and it provides a lot of different stuff here. You have 5 different species which provide different aesthetics, and we love doing custom color matching. It could be one panel, a cloud, 50 square feet, and we provide any custom color matching. The color matches are sent out in 5 days. They ship in 5 days. We have a whole process to ensure that's dialed in quality. So a lot of different choices there. And We give you a price range so that you're playing around with this. You immediately see, you don't have to necessarily contact us, wait for us to get back to you, right? You can get the immediate impacts of that. And the other thing we've heard is, when you get into custom, lead times can become a big headache. I've been in meetings where designers says, this sounds great, but Jonathan, is this going to be a headache later on when the GC comes and it's like months and months, right? Well, everything you're designing here is 3 to 6 weeks. So once the order's been finalized, the subcontractor, the acoustical sub, and that they sign the contract. It's 3 to 6 weeks for us to fabricate it and ship it out the door. And that alleviates that potential, problem there. And then we have a lot of information here. So if you need data sheets, guide specs, a CAD packet, we have Revit families. These are actually Revit families, which work better, fire rating, HPD. So all the information's here. And as you make different choices, the more relevant information will be there. You can download it and you can order whatever samples you need. Sometimes you really just, I need to see a sample, you need to get the samples. The idea is all the information's at your fingertips. But the other thing we've heard, especially early on in design, that installed photos are great to look at the particular product just to get ideas. And actually, we've heard people say they use them to communicate with clients a lot. And so this provides a huge like Pinterest of installed photos. And so you can actually not just get a sample or look at it like a visualization. Um, Revit family, you can look at a lot of different options here of different materials, different like, trimming conditions, all sorts of things. And if you find something you're interested in, you can pin it, you can look at it. And so really trying to provide a lot of different information, right at your fingertips. And you can even start configuring, hey, I want to look at this. I want to get into this a little bit more. Um, Ideally, we're trying to solve that problem where you get all the information you need. You can still get a fully custom wood ceiling. And we built in a lot of the standards, where some choices aren't available and we'll let because they just don't, work out. Like scrim with big, huge reveals will tend to sag. And so it kind of mistake proofs some of the design decisions here in an informed way. So you're aware of what's happening. And again, you got budget pricing, everything's 3 to 6 weeks, and you got all the downloads. Anything you want to see here. Um, this is our cube system. We're continuing to expand this because it's an expensive wood ceiling. You deserve to get the wood ceiling you want for a client. And we can provide custom stain matches for any of these materials. Just click order a sample, send us our control, and we'll have it shipped out within 5 days. We love doing color matches. This is that's a curving system. We'll continue to expand this so you can look at different configurations and choices. And there's no minimum, so you can go down to 50 square feet, even less. We've done some that are smaller, and you still get all the same service, as many samples as you need, custom color matching. There's no additional premium, to get a color match on a small project. That's not an issue at all, because sometimes you just need a small cloud or a different material for a client, and you should be able to get the same service for that. And this is a hybrid. We added this in, you may want to have more texture for a particular product. This looks like millwork, right? But it can provide, you can mix and match them however you want. And as we get more feedback, on what's helpful there, we will be expanding it. And and the other thing we do too is we have, because it is a custom wood ceiling. And so it's great to have all this information at your fingertips, visualization, installation photos, but it is complicated. And so at some point, you're going to need to talk to an actual technical expert, a human being. And so we reserve capacity with what we call our design assist specialists or support team there. And they're always available, in your time. If you want to meet tomorrow at a certain time or you need someone to jump in a call, our salespeople can bring them in because sometimes you say, hey, I got to go over these conditions or lighting integration, right? I need to make sure this is heading down the right road before I make decisions. You definitely don't want to rework with your client later on because you discover, oh, we can't do that or that's a problem. And so this is it. And it's really trying to solve that problem. You can get the custom wood ceiling you want with a lot less effort, and less risk and get the information you need either through the online design tool, the photos, the Revit families. And we're really eager to get feedback because we want to not make this, for manufacturers. We think a certain way. We're really taking a lot of feedback from designers that are working here and trying to create something that actually helps you do your job, make more confident decisions faster. So yeah, and it's available. Just log in, you can try it out, and hopefully it's helpful in your next custom wood ceiling. So
Awesome. This is amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Jonathan. Um, Perfect. So, there were a few more questions in that came in. I'll ask just one of the shorter questions here, just for the sake of time. So, this question is, do you have a three-part CSI master format specification?
I don't know the answer to that now, but I can find out
Okay,
and get back to you.
that's fine. Yeah, I'll let you follow up on the rest of these questions that came in as well, because there's just a few more questions. But we'll connect you all with via email afterwards and get those answered. Jonathan, are there any final notes you'd like to make before we wrap it up today?
Just probably to log in, check this out, and I'm available. So you'll get my contact info. So if you do have any questions, just shoot me an email. I know everyone's busy and I will be able to answer your question. And I'll definitely reach out during these that we didn't get to. So just
Okay.
shoot it my way. Even if you're not working with Ninewood, that's not a problem. Hey, I got a question. I'll be glad to answer it and then log in and check it out. We really do believe it will save you time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And those folks who did fill out the poll, we'll see an connection through the conversation come in a couple days. So that's another great way to get connected with Jonathan and his team. So look out for that email. You can respond directly to it. It's coming from a no reply Acelab email address, or log into your Acelab account and respond to the conversations there. Either way works, or of course, email is also an option as well. So thank you so much, Jonathan, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, everyone. Okay.
Thank you.